Is France's new president getting too powerful? Before flying to Estonia for an EU summit, Emmanuel Macron posing with police as Parliament works on a bill to permanently give them enhanced search and seizure powers. Powers granted after the Paris attacks. The idea is to enshrine parts of the ongoing state of emergency into common law. It's not just civil liberties that have detractors worried. In the past week, Macron has made good on his campaign promise to bypass Parliament and enact controversial labor reforms by decree. With the parliamentary opposition weak and splintered, is France being run as a winner-takes-all democracy? The 39-year-old one-time economics whiz kid now openly boasts of his ambition to run a, quote, Jupiter-like presidency. Historians ask if that's any different really from any of his predecessors. In this, the EU's only democracy, where the head of state lords over Parliament and the Prime Minister. Today in the France 24 debate, we're wondering, does he have too much power? And with us to talk about it, Romain Duperret, members of Lawyers En Marche.
Good evening.
En Marche, of course, is a nod to his party, which is
indeed
loosely translated as the Republic on the Move.
Exactly.
Also with us, civil liberties attorney Asif Arif. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And we welcome public relations consultant and lobbyist Jean de Nicolet.
Good evening.
Glad you could make it. The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter. The hashtag F24debate. Emmanuel Macron was supposed to make a speech in Lyon this Thursday. Instead, he went for a tour along the banks of the River Rhône. He's pushed his address back to next month before police officers. Officially, it's because he has to fly early to that summit, but it's also been seen as, avoiding a showdown, what with the biggest police union announcing it would have boycotted the president's speech. Their rank and file say they're overstretched and need more means to do their job. Romain Duperret, the president, rebutted, saying that, yes, he's increasing means for policing. Do the police have what they need?
Yes, I mean, we're under a state of emergency for almost 2 years now after the very severe Bataclan terrorist attack. So there was a need to rethink about these very serious matters and to try to adjust them to make sure we have the legal means to still be able to actually fight terrorism efficiently, but still to make sure there would be a recourse before judges when the case was...
That's concerning that anti-terror bill that's up before Parliament. But regarding the policemen themselves, and we've had the riot police calling in sick. We've had police officers, again, this police union saying it would have boycotted his speech had he given it this Thursday, Emmanuel Macron. Do the police have what they need to fight crime and the such right now?
I hope so. Once again, I don't know this specific case, and maybe it's more anecdotic that more very important matter. The very important matter is actually this new law that we can talk about maybe at
which we'll talk about in a moment. Asif Arif, are the police hard done by in France?
Yes, well, I think they have all the mean for counter-terror. You have special division for counter-terrorism. Well, the question is about our services, our intelligence. Do they have the mean to fight terrorism? Because they have a very key role to play in this counterterrorism, and whether that our intelligence has sufficiently mean. This is a particular question, I think.
All right, so more money's needed, but not necessarily for more policing. Mm-hmm. Jean de Nicolet, explain for people who don't live in France. Mm-hmm. We've had several incidents of police being the target of, there was an incident of police being attacked on camera during demonstrations last year. Sure. A police car that was firebombed by alleged drug kingpins in a suburb of Paris. So, but is this anything new?
Actually, I don't think it is absolutely new. To be honest with you, I'm definitely not going to go into much police, but much more on war on terrorism. I would say that whatever it takes. Let's say just that at this point, we're fighting terrorism. And I know that the police don't have, I would say the police don't have the means they need right now. And so I understand what they're talking about. And I mean, it reminds me that we should help them and probably our military action also. So yes, I would give them.
You give them enhanced means
Yeah.
at this point. All right, let's talk about the bill. Now, France has been under a state of emergency since November 2015 and the first Paris attacks. To lift it, the National Assembly expected to complete passage this Thursday of a bill to enshrine parts of the state of the counter-terror measures permanently into law. Those include new rules on house arrest, accelerated search and seizure with a magistrate's warrant, and extra patrol powers near border areas of the country.
Today, the government is proposing a balanced text that aims to protect, but which also takes care to guarantee all our freedoms, and which sometimes even strengthens them. A text that adapts our common law and brings a lasting answer to a long-lasting threat.
A balanced text. Azif Arif?
Well, I don't think it's a balanced text. First of all, let me clarify something here. I know we're talking about the presidency of Emmanuel Macron. It has been a couple of months now he's president. But the main thing is it has been 2 years that we are in state of emergency. So the liability should be taken by François Hollande as well, who let the state of emergency play for that amount of time. So this is the first thing that we need to remind to our viewers, if I can say that. But the second thing is we cannot say that this bill is a balanced bill because we have more than 10 texts and bills on counterterrorism. This is
That are already on the books.
They are already on the book, and we have surveillance measure. We have a lot of mean, and police have a lot of mean in order to counter terrorism. And I think this law is just political. It's a political move from Emmanuel Macron, which is very clever because he is in the midst of this crisis, whether we have to exit the state of emergency or not, and he chose to do it through a mean, which is a legal mean, exit the state of emergency. But is it a controlled exit of the state of emergency? I don't think so. And concerning this, what Gérard Collomb has said,
The Interior Minister.
Yeah, the Interior Minister has said it's a bill who is sometimes in some of articles strengthening the civil liberties. That cannot be said in that way. I don't ever think that this bill will strengthen our civic liberties.
Romain Dupéret?
Yes, there was a need to go out of the state of emergency because, as it is named, you cannot stay forever under that state. And actually, there is a very delicate work in trying to find this balance, and we are very watchful. And I don't want to be a caricature of having a civil liberty lawyer and a non-civil liberty lawyer. I'm very attached to liberties as well. So that's why we are very watchful and really look on a provision by provision basis to make sure that for each provision the judge will have a role to play to make sure that there is no abuse of power from the executive power or from the policemen in particular. So that's our concern, and we'll be very watchful.
But is it political? Do they really need enhanced search and seizure powers right now? Without the state of emergency, normally you get a warrant from a magistrate. Why do you need extra powers?
So for this specific example, you will still have a prior authorization from a judge before entering anybody's place. So that's the discussion today, was to make sure that the initiative can be taken by the executive power, but you will still have a judge giving an authorization before the search is made. So that's our concern. That's true that it goes a little bit further than what was the case before, it was a judge-made initiative. Now it's a little bit different, but still with a lot of judicial warranties around it.
Amnesty International doesn't see the need for new legislation, quote, given the legal and judicial powers already in place to counter terrorism-related crimes. The group worries the measures can be used to limit people's rights and freedoms on very vague grounds such as, and I'm quoting here, glorifying terrorism or because of an ill-defined threat to national security.
Following this reasoning, we will punish the person first, place restrictions on their private life. It will be the person's responsibility to prove their innocence, without even having been formally accused of anything. We find ourselves in a rather Kafkaesque situation.
Jean de Dicolet,
Yeah.
we find ourselves in a situation with this bill. The accusation there is that you're going to be from now on guilty till proven innocent.
I'm not going to be a very good debater because I think it's balanced. I'm going to go against you, but the thing is, I think it's balanced. I think that we need it. I think that it's totally, it's a good move. Not only a political one. I think that really it's a good move for us, for country, for everything. So let's say that, assume I give a good point to the government and to Emmanuel Macron, and that, what would you say? Do you say it's not balanced?
I don't think it's balanced, because if we think about the prior authorization of a judge, it intervenes whenever for example, the measure is renewed. And when the renewal come, and you have this detention and liberty judge who will come and who will give his approval on the basis. But if you practice law, to be honest, you will see that the judge of detention and liberty is more the judge of detention rather than the judge of liberty.
Because it seems quite balanced when you say it like that. I mean, before entering into the second fort.
Of course, if we look at the paper, it looked balanced. But the main thing is that the person who are being targeted by these measures are only person on which there is no legal element in their criminal cases. And this is out of all the principles that we defended for a couple of years now, and our Declaration of Human Rights is against it. So we need to see either whether we are for our Declaration of Human Rights, for the Convention of Human Rights, and it has to be noted that since a couple of years now, France is not applying main disposition from the European Convention of Human Rights because we are under state of emergency. So now we will come back to the normal, and maybe we will challenge these disposition in front of the European Court of Human Rights, and we'll see if it is compliant with the human rights or not.
Do you take the point of that researcher from Amnesty International that with grounds for house arrest that are vague, things like glorifying terrorism, being a threat to national security, that you'll be guilty till proven innocent?
I mean, glorifying terrorism is not vague for me. It's a very clear thing. You have to prove that there is a glorification. That means a very strong statement in favor of something, and terrorism is also
but that can
something
mean
we can
it can mean anything from being part of a propaganda arm of a jihadist group to perhaps making an off-the-cuff remark that's heard by the neighbors.
Exactly, that can be that indeed, and you have to patch it to what right it gives to the state, and it's not a right to put you in prison. It's just a right to have more close surveillance on yourself, and that means under the state of emergency you could not leave your home because the préfet, the state local
superintendent
representative told you not to do. Under this new proposal, under this new draft, you could not leave the city. So the spectrum is very much larger, and it's for 3 months and not a year, and then you can have a recourse before the judge. So as you see, it's not a blanket rule that you have to stay at home whatever you did. Is if you glorified terrorism, then you are under stricter surveillance, and you can have recourse to a judge if you consider that it wasn't duly applied to you.
You have clients, you were saying, from a mosque that was shut in the east of Paris. They're under house arrest?
Yeah, they're still under house arrest. And I think when the law will pass in November, because there is no hope for us, I think, as a militant of human rights, that this law will not pass. But when it will pass, I think they will still be under this law. And, you know, once one of my clients called me, and it has been 2 years that he's under house arrest. And
why is he under house arrest?
For a couple of allegedly being a friend with this guy and being a friend with the other guys. And this is a big problem too. The suspicion that are under the state of emergency are really vague, and as Amnesty International mentioned. And so this guy called me and he said, how long it will take, how much more longer I will be house arrest. And this is a question that I returned to the president and also to the government member, because one day or another, we will have to have this report on what we've done. And I don't think it's my deep conviction that struggling against terrorists is not compiling law and responding to one act of terror by one law. I don't think this is the way to do things. I think when we make a law after one terrorist attack, we are actually serving the terrorism because they want us to change. They want us to change our state of law, and we are doing it, and we are doing it every day. And this is not normal, I think.
All right, I'll get the reaction of the panel when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate, and we're looking at a French president headed to an EU summit during a week where he has made bold plans for Europe, has also, though, managed in the past week to pass labor reform, bypassing Parliament by decree, and has a state of emergency bill that's going through Parliament to enshrine into common law some of the measures to lift that state of emergency. We're talking about it in the company of Romain Duperret, Macron supporter, a member of Lawyers En Marche, Lawyers on the Move, civil liberties attorney Asif Arif, and public relations consultant and lobbyist Jean de Nicolet. Welcome back to all three of you. Just before the break, Asif Arif saying that the problem with these enhanced measures that give more power to the state, more power to these préfets, the superintendents, more power to police, that this is what the jihadists want. They want there to be this, this repressive state.
That's true. We're not looking forward to have anti-terror law either. I mean, it's not a purpose or a goal we wanted to achieve at the beginning. But the whole issue is we should try to find some common grounds on how to fight it with our own values, respecting our own values and liberties. And that's why it's not another layer of law. I think it's consolidating many of the initiatives which were taken so far to try to fight terrorism. And the issue is, should we go out of the state of emergency? We believe we should. And in that case, should we go back to what was the case before? We think we shouldn't. We think we need some new legal instrument to better fight terrorism, with also the safeguard of some judicial authority and involvement in this. Just coming back also to the cases of the two individuals you mentioned before, there are 2 out of 39 people under these specific circumstances.
Under house arrest.
Exactly. So we're not talking about hundreds of people. It's very narrowly tailored against people against whom there are very strong and concordant intelligence that they would be about to threaten national security.
Right. So these bills, again, civil libertarians worried that they're going to reduce people's individual freedoms. They're going to be permanent. And we also had Jean Nicolet, your reaction to Emmanuel Macron choosing to bypass Parliament completely and use what the French call ordinances, decrees, to pass his labor reform. Was that the way to do it? Wouldn't it have been better to have a vote in Parliament?
It depends on what you're looking for at the beginning. But first, ordinances, every president in the Fifth Republic has done some. I mean, Nicolas Sarkozy, François Hollande, around 150 of them for Nicolas Sarkozy, if I'm not mistaken, and around 120 for François Hollande. What does
On
it
something
mean?
so major, don't you consult Parliament?
I mean, you consult Parliament, definitely, but if you want to go fast, use the fast way. What is the fast way? The fast way is just making ordinances. And
even if it's a little less democratic?
I mean, the French Constitution allows the president to do so. So what do you want to do? I mean, I'm not going to lie to say that I was not a huge Macron supporter at the beginning, but yes, he's right to do it. I mean, if he wants to go fast, let's go fast. It's not forgetting the parliament. It's just saying that we need quick reforms. He promised a lot of things. What should you do? Let's go. Let's go for it, ordinances, and we'll see. And as you know, 6 months later, you have to review. You have to definitely vote those ordinances. And at this point, you know if your law or actually your first ordinances were good or not.
Romain Duperret, he's got a big majority in Parliament. Why didn't he just go the normal way for this one?
Just to be very clear, the anti-terror law is not adopted by
No, this is going through Parliament. No, we're talking about the labor reform bill here now.
Exactly, because the anti-terror law was discussed at length all night long. One single measure was debated for hours and hours.
Yeah.
With regard to the labor reform, it was very much democratic all the way along, because during the campaign, Emmanuel Macron said, I want to make this reform. It's vital for the country. I want to do it fast. I will do it by way of ordinances.
But why? He's got this big majority in Parliament. Why didn't he?
Exactly.
Why didn't he just get a vote in the National Assembly?
For many reasons. Because actually he wanted to make sure he would have debates with the syndicates, but really in-depth
trade unions.
Yeah, in-depth debate with them. And the Ministry of Labour met 50 trade unions during the summer, which would have been unworkable if the whole parliament was involved. That being said, the parliament voted an authorization for the president to adopt ordinances with quite specific guidelines on what the president should do. And now the ordinances will come back to the parliament for the parliament to make sure that actually these 5 ordinances respected the mandate of the president, and they may be amended if they don't. So I think it was a means to democratically be efficient on the crucial point for the reform.
So,
well, I think I agree on this point. As long as the terror law is not passing by ordinance, I'm pretty fine with it. But the problem with there's not really, it's not really a big issue about this work ordinance.
It's not a big issue in France.
No, I don't think so. You know why? Because I think more than parliaments, trade union need to be consulted on these points. And trade union were consulted, and pretty long time ago. And during all this summer, while people were going to summer vacancy, there's some people working on it. So if everyone is consulted, and even some member of parliament, let's be honest, they never worked. So let's be straightforward on this point. I think it's pretty democratical.
French citizens have a different notion of what democracy is. Sciences Po's annual survey of how the French view their politics this year was published in January, so it was published before the presidential election. So bear that in mind when you look at these figures. Here's the graph that shows that only 29% believe that democracy was working. Again, this is from January. Of all their institutions, citizens place the most trust at the local level in municipal councils, with that confidence waning the higher up you go towards, whether it be regional councils, parliament, etc. Now, more startling, 49% of the French say they would prefer a strong man unhindered by a parliament or by elections. They either strongly agree or agree that they would prefer a strong leader. And Jean-Denis Nicolet, I'm haunted by what you just said a moment ago. Look, if we want to get things done, we have to go fast.
Some ways, yeah.
So is that a sign of the times? That because we see, right, we have Donald Trump in the U.S., Shinzo Abe in Japan, Narendra Modi in India. We have these strong leaders who are getting elected. Is that a sign of the times that this is good or bad? This idea that the French, they want a strong leader.
A strong leader, yes, probably. What is the last French leader that French people, think about a lot of times? Charles de Gaulle. What was Charles de Gaulle? Charles de Gaulle was a strong leader. On the other way, you say they want to bypass the parliament. They're not confident in their parliament. It's not really true. They're confident in the parliament. I think that was the difference is that Emmanuel Macron is at a turn. He's been elected on several promises. Those promises are very hard to keep on. It would be very complicated for him to realize all those things in one term, especially. So right now, he has to go fast. It's not a choice. He has to go fast. And why? Because as you just saw, French people are bored with politics. They don't believe in their political guys. They don't even believe in a lot of things right now. not talking about the media in some way, but
is this worrying when it comes to rule of law and democracy, that the people, so many people in this country have this attitude that, well,
I understand that
balance of powers, let's get things done. It doesn't really matter
it's
so
not,
much.
it does,
We can have a
let's
strong
not say that.
executive and that's it.
No, I won't say that. I just said it's in our constitution. I mean, at one point, we have a constitution. If it respects the constitution, I mean, why should we bother to be... I mean, he wants to, the French president, wants to reform the constitution. It will need either 3/5 of the whole Congress. I mean, Senate, and you add the French Congress, l'Assemblée nationale. Or he's going to go by referendum. So, I mean, he's going right now probably to the referendum because he just had like a tough moment with the senatorial elections. So, yes, he's going to ask the people. I mean, at some point, I don't see something that is restraining or... I mean, I just see... I mean, probably at the moment, I see he's pragmatic. He's being pragmatic. That's all.
He's using, certainly, as we said at the outset, all the levers at his disposal. And those levers, as Jean just mentioned, were put in place in 1958 when General de Gaulle made this constitution. And those levers, I mean, we've seen them... They've even there's a term which is called triumphant Gaullism, and choosing Versailles to host Vladimir Putin, choosing the Sorbonne to make his big speech on Europe. Now, great pictures, but is there something a little more sinister, a little more, an authoritarian bend in what the president is doing?
Authoritarian, this word is extremely strong. I don't think so. French voters, they voted 4 times in 2017. So I think they had their say in what they wanted for the future. We commented it.
But it is a bit of a winner-takes-all democracy. You have in Germany, Angela Merkel wins 34%, and she's going to spend months composing a coalition government. Macron won 24%, and he's got all these powers now.
Yeah, he got all this power, but he has a prime minister of a party which is not his party. So, he composed also to try to have a large majority. Last week, he actually didn't win the majority at the Senate. The French Constitutional Council actually canceled some of the wording of the recently adopted laws. So there are many checks and balances, but it's true that at the time of social network, immediate replies and back and forth, sometimes the French people, they find all this process quite slow when they believe there's so much to do to really enter the 21st century. So that's why also you want to make use of the civic tech and the civic technology to try to have the civil society concretely involved in this reform in the future.
Azif Arif, you agree that France is not more or less democratic than it was when de Gaulle founded the Fifth Republic?
Well, I think it's the same than before. You have a parliament, you have a president. Well, I think it contrasts with the presidency of François Hollande as well. French people used to live with 5 years of François Hollande, where he was not that active as a president. His prime minister was doing all the job, and now we have back to a president who is pretty active on his job, and he's trying to show up more and trying to work harder, or showing at least to people that he's trying to do stuff. So I don't think it need to be categorized in being a person with a lot of authority or whatever. If there is a strong president and there is a strong parliament, I think everything can be very smooth.
But does France have a strong parliament right now?
You need to have a strong parliament. I mean, as they mentioned, both of them, it's very interesting on the fact that even though he's governing by ordinance, his ordinances are backed by the parliament members. So no matter what, there is a democratical process in everything. So,
and Emmanuel Macron, his winning formula was to reach across both sides of the aisle, left and right, try a more consensual approach. Interesting to note how the Macron, in his big speech that he gave on reforming Europe this week at the Sorbonne University, on a lot of measures, he seemed to tack more to one side. Macron pushing counterterrorism at the supranational level and border protection as well. Listen to what he had to say about it.
I want a true European asylum office to be created, to accelerate and harmonize our procedures, so that we have connected files and secure biometric ID documents. Because today we're handling thousands of asylum requests that our European partners have already refused. We should progressively establish a European border force, which guarantees rigorous management of borders everywhere in Europe and ensures that those who are not allowed to stay are returned.
A lot of concrete things in there. Long on measures to keep the borders shut. Kind of short in his speech, and it was a long speech, on what to do to better welcome the refugees that have come here.
Yes, I don't think it's very much one-sided. I think there's maybe a common objective in dealing with this request, this asylum request quickly, because the problematic time is the time when people do not know if they will be able to stay or not, as they cannot settle to find a job. So I think it's a common objective to try to find a way to deal with this request in a human and efficient way. And also I think there's a common shared objective that we must integrate and welcome people who have a right to be there, and the other one, we must have the courage to say that they can't. So.
Azif Arif?
Well, I cannot agree on that, of course, but regarding asylum law and asylum seekers, for example, if we talk about welcoming them, indeed we really do welcome them. But if you see all the way in the procedure of asylum seekers, they are quitting their country because they are persecuted on the basis of their faith or political ideas. They come in France. First thing is police aux frontières, border cops are coming and taking them into a retention center and telling them, okay, do you want to apply asylum or not? So this is what they are doing. And first people that they meet in France is a magistrate, again, a court of law. So the thing is, we need to not necessarily go on cooperation with European country, because when I see asylum seekers procedure, if there is you have the Dublin circular where someone who's giving his fingerprint in Italia, he has been recognized if he come to France. So there is all these means.
Macron's predecessor had said that the process had been speeded up and made more efficient.
Well, the speed doesn't mean it will be more efficient, because if you speeded up the process, it means that the time that you will give for interviewing each and every one asylum seeker will go to half an hour to 10 minutes. And they have something to say to France that they are persecuted. So is the speed good enough to have a better asylum policy? I don't think so.
Before, you had people for years in limbo, and the idea is that now they had said that they were going to accelerate the procedure.
I think we need to find a common ground here too. I mean, there is no. This is not a matter of 2 months or 4 years. We need to find a measure where asylum people or whatever foreigner are coming into our country, that has to be treated with dignity. That's all what we want.
Jean de Nicolet, your thoughts on how this president is handling the job of president in terms of, again, using all the powers at his disposal. You were saying it was a good thing when it came to labor reform. It's better to go fast. What about these issues that are difficult, where, as was just mentioned by Romain, that you have to show a balance between sending those back that don't need to be and keeping in those that need to stay?
First thing, I'm going to differ. I don't think that he has too much power. I don't know. I think that this has been a wonderful hit done by probably, I would say, Jean-Luc Mélenchon and his party, that just created the thing that he has too much power. Emmanuel Macron has 318 congressmen, I think. Just because I do think that I recall that Nicolas Sarkozy had 343 around, and François Hollande around 325. So we're talking about a huge assembly that should be all Emmanuel Macron's one. It's not true. I mean, they have a group supported with the centrist, but for the rest, I mean, no, he's not having. In Senate, we're talking about 23 senators or 24, something like that. I don't, okay, if you know how the Senate works, he's gonna have the help. He's gonna have the help of the other ones, but no, he's not juggling with all the powers. That's not true. I think that what he has right now is a strong will, and he's got I think that the French people still trust him. So that's the power. The real power is trusting that he's got the trust.
Before we go, Romain Duperret, you talked about how the country has to be one of compassion. When there were the first Paris attacks in November 2015, even before with the Charlie Hebdo attacks, there was this talk about the French had this expression, le vivre ensemble, the living together. Mm-hmm. What's the new president's plan?
I think some time ago, a few weeks ago, I was at our party national gathering, and Edouard Philippe, our prime minister, was there. He said, Emmanuel Macron, he has a sense of complexity. So he will not try to make all things easy or more simpler than they are actually. So for each cases, he will try to find not a unanimity, because it's not possible, but try to gather French people around a certain equilibrium, be it on the labor reform, be it on the anti-terror reform. So it takes time, but
and building trust between communities.
Exactly, but it's also by being balanced. That's why I want to be very watchful with the lawyers on the move on this anti-terror law, because we were very concerned that it should not be abused against anybody. But he has the determination and this sense of sometimes compromising, which may sound contradictory, but he's doing great, I think, so far.
Okay, Romain Duperret, I want to thank you. I want to thank, there's an endorsement. Azif Harif, many thanks as well. I want to thank Jean de Nicolet. Stay with us, because Media Watch is next. Stay. And we say hello at this point to Emma James. And Emma, the French president, in the spotlight.
Yes.
And not just in France.
No, not at all. And largely this is because France's success is seen as key to the future of Europe, basically. But if we take a look at this week's Economist, which is a UK magazine, very well thought of across the globe, basically, and they have Monsieur Macron very much in the spotlight, almost marking him out as a celebrity president. We can't see the image at the moment, but it has him basically talking at the microphone, lit up, with Angela Merkel standing in the shadows behind him. Now, whether that's supposed to mean that she's the real power or whether it's just that she's there for support, I'm not sure quite what they're thinking of. But The Economist has done a 10-page report, basically, focusing on France, and it's all about the promises and risks of Emmanuel Macron's approach. And, of course, the French people voted for change, but the French are renowned, really, for not being that keen on the idea of change. And what they are getting is certainly an attempt at making some differences to the French society. But Emmanuel Macron is in for a rocky ride, and as they point out, after his first 100 days, Emmanuel Macron's approval rating fell to just 36%, which was the lowest of any modern French president at this point. And you do have to wonder whether the French really saw him as being somewhat Obama-esque in the beginning. Certainly the French have loved President Obama in the United States, but the French do have a taste for the low-key. Look at how unpopular Nicolas Sarkozy became when he became known as President Bling Bling. And François Hollande, of course, with his very checkered love life, his popularity really, I think, began to plummet when this sort of love triangle and tales of him going around Paris on a scooter to visit his actress lover. Right. It's all that kind of thing. And so really, Emmanuel Macron needs to kind of keep a lower profile, according to many French people's way of thinking. Sophie Pedder has written a lot of the articles inside this Economist, and she's basically talking about the fact that he is a man who can seize opportunities. He's got determination bordering on ruthlessness, she says, and a gift for embodying a hopeful optimism that has long eluded France, apparently. But, she says, he is going to be judged on one thing and one thing alone, and that is whether or not he can get the economy back on track. Now, looking elsewhere, it does appear that things are improving for Emmanuel Macron because the popularity polls in which he has plummeted, as we know, there is a new one out today done by IFOP for Le Journal du Dimanche, and they say that he is very much on the rise. Now, according to Pierre Briançon, who writes for Politico, he's looked at all the detail of this, and he says that it's back up because basically he sticks to his guns. He does what it says on the tin, and that's something that a lot of world leaders don't necessarily necessarily follow through with. So he's gone up from 40% approval rate in August to 45% in September. And what Mr. Briançon points out is that this is striking because even when the French didn't like his policies when they were asked about it, they are beginning to respect him apparently for his character. One other thing to note, though, Alberto Nardelli of BuzzFeed, he's the Europe editor at BuzzFeed, has pointed out that I wonder if we're going to see just as many articles on his bump in the polls as we saw when he fell in the polls, because everybody always loves those bad news stories and they're not always so quick to report on when things are going better. So we shall wait and see.
Well, I know who'll be checking to make sure to keep score, and that'll be Emma James. Many thanks. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.